The Mahabharata of Krishna-Dwaipayana Vyasa. Translated into English prose from the original Sanskrit text by Pratap Chandra Roy C.I.E. This free ebook has been downloaded from holybooks.com. Virata Parva. Section 28, Virata Parva continued. Vaisampayana said, then that grandsire of the Bharatas, Bhishma the son of Santanu, conversant with the Veds, acquainted with the proprieties of time and place, and possessing a knowledge of every duty of morality, after the conclusion of Drona's speech, applauded the words of the preceptor and spake unto the Bharatas for their benefit these words consistent with virtue, expressive of his attachment to the virtuous Yudhishthira, rarely spoken by men that are dishonest, and always meeting with the approbation of the honest. And the words that Bhishma spake were thoroughly impartial and worshipped by the wise. And the grandsire of the Kurus said, the words that the regenerate Drona acquainted with the truth of every affair hath uttered are approved by me. I have no hesitation in saying so. Endued with every auspicious mark, observant of virtuous vows, possessed of Vedic lore, devoted to religious observances, conversant with various sciences, obedient to the counsels of the aged, adhering to the vow of truth, acquainted with the proprieties of time, observant of the pledge they have given in respect of their exile, pure in their behavior, ever adhering to the duties of the Kshatriya order, always obedient to Kesava, high-souled, possessed of great strength, and ever bearing the burdens of the wise, those heroic ones can never wither under misfortune. Aided by their own energy, sons of Pandu who are now leading a life of concealment in obedience to virtue, will surely never perish. It is even this that my mind surmiseth. Therefore, O Bharata, I am for employing the aid of honest counsel in our behavior towards the sons of Pandu. It would not be the policy of any wise man to cause them to be discovered now by means of spies. What we should do unto the sons of Pandu, I shall say, reflecting with the aid of the intellect. Know that I shall say nothing from ill will to thee. People like me should never give such counsels to him that is dishonest, for only counsels like those I would give should be offered unto them that are honest. Counsels, however, that are evil should under no circumstances be offered. He, O child, that is devoted to truth and obedient to the aged, he indeed that is wise, while speaking in the midst of an assembly, should under all circumstances speak the truth, if the acquisition of virtue be an object with him. I should therefore say that I think differently from all those people here, in respect of the abode of Yudhishthira the just in this the 13th year of his exile. The ruler, O child, of the city or the province where King Yudhishthira resides cannot have any misfortune. Charitable and liberal and humble and modest must the people be of the country where King Yudhishthira resides. Agreeable in speech, with passions under control, observant of truth, cheerful, healthy, pure in conduct, and skillful in work must the people be of the country where King Yudhishthira resides. The people of the place, where Yudhishthira is, cannot be envious or malicious, or vain, or proud, but must all adhere to their respective duties. Indeed, in the place where Yudhishthira resides, Vedic hymns will be chanted all around, sacrifices will be performed, the last full libations will always be poured and gifts to Brahmanas will always be in profusion. There the clouds, without doubt, pour abundant rain, and furnished with good harvest the country will ever be without fear. There the paddy will not be without grain, fruits will not be bereft of juice, floral garlands will not be without fragrance, and the conversation of men will always be full of agreeable words. There, where King Yudhishthira resides, the breezes will be delicious, the meetings of men will always be friendly and cause of fear there will be none. Their kin will be plentiful, without any of them being lean-fleshed or weak, and milk and curds and butter will all be savory and nutritious. There, where King Yudhishthira resides, every kind of corn will be full of nutrition and every edible full of flavor. There, where King Yudhishthira resides, the objects of all the senses, viz. Taste, touch, smell, and hearing, will be endued with excellent attributes. There where King Yudhishthira resides, the sights and scenes will be gladdening. And the regenerate ones of that place will be virtuous and steady in observing their respective duties. Indeed, in the country where the sons of Pandu may have taken up their abode during this 13th year of their exile, the people will be contented and cheerful, pure in conduct and without misery of any kind. Devoted to gods and guests and the worship of these with their whole soul, they will be fond of giving away and filled with great energy. They will all be observant of eternal virtue. There, where King Yudhishthira resides, the people, eschewing all that is evil, will be desirous of achieving only what is good. Always observant of sacrifices and pure vows and hating untruth in speech, the people of the place where King Yudhishthira may reside will always be desirous of obtaining what is good, auspicious and beneficial. There, where Yudhishthira resides, the people will certainly be desirous of achieving what is good, and their hearts will always incline towards virtue, and their vows being agreeable, they themselves are ever engaged in the acquisition of religious merit. O child, that son of Pritha in whom are intelligence and charity, the highest tranquility and undoubted forgiveness, modesty and prosperity and fame and great energy and a love for all creatures, is incapable of being found out now that he hath concealed himself even by Brahmanas, let alone ordinary persons. The wise Yudhishthira is living in close disguise in regions whose characteristics I have described. Regarding his excellent mode of life, I dare not say anything more. Reflecting well upon all this, do without loss of time what thou mayst think to be beneficial, O Prince of the Kuru race, if indeed thou hast any faith in me. Thus ends the 28th section in the Guharana Parva of the Virata Parva. Section 29, Guharana Parva continued. Vaisampayana said, then Saradvatha's son, Kripa said, what the aged Bhishra hath said concerning the Pandavas is reasonable, suited to the occasion, consistent with virtue and profit, agreeable to the ear, fraught with sound reason and worthy of him. Listen also to what I would say on this subject. It behoveth thee to ascertain the track they have followed and their abode also by means of spies, and to adopt that policy which may bring about thy welfare. O child, he that is solicitous of his welfare should not disregard even an ordinary foe. What shall I say then, O child of the Pandavas, who are thorough masters of all weapons in battle? When therefore the time cometh for the reappearance of the high-souled Pandavas, who, having entered the forest, are now passing their days in close disguise, thou shouldst ascertain thy strength both in thy own kingdom and in those of other kings. Without doubt, the return of the Pandavas is at hand. When their promised term of exile is over, the illustrious and mighty sons of Pritha, endued with immeasurable prowess, will come hither bursting with energy. Do thou therefore, in order to conclude an advantageous treaty with them, have recourse to sound policy and address thyself to increase thy forces and improve thy treasury. O child, ascertaining all these, reckon thou thy own strength in respect of all thy allies weak and strong. Ascertaining the efficiency, and weakness, and indifference of thy forces, as also who amongst them are well affected and who are disaffected, we should either fight the foe or make treaty with him. Having recourse to the arts of conciliation, disunion, chastisement, bribery, presents and fair behavior, attack thy foes and subdue the weak by might, and win over thy allies and troops by soft speeches. When thou hast by these means strengthened thy army and filled thy treasury, entire success will be thine. When thou hast done all this, thou wilt be able to fight with powerful enemies that may present themselves, let alone the sons of Pandu deficient in troops and animals of their own. By adopting all these expedients according to the customs of thy order, thou wilt, O foremost of men, attain enduring happiness in due time. Thus ends the 29th section in the Guharana Parva of the Virata Parva. Section 30, Guharana Parva continued. Vaisampayana said, discomfited before, O monarch, many a time and oft by Matsya's Sutha Kichheka, aided by the Matsyas and the Salyas, the mighty king of the Trigatas, Suzaman, who owned innumerable cars, regarding the opportunity to be a favorable one, then spoke the following words without losing a moment. And, O monarch, forcibly vanquished along with his relatives by the mighty Kichheka, King Suzaman, eyeing Karna in askance, spoke these words unto Duryodhana. My kingdom hath many a time been forcibly invaded by the king of the Matsyas. The mighty Kichheka was that king's generalissimo. Crooked and wrathful and of wicked soul of prowess famed over all the world, sinful in deeds and highly cruel that wretch, however hath been slain by the Gandharvas. Kichheka being dead, King Virata, shorn of pride and his refuge gone, will I imagine, lose all courage. I think we ought now to invade that kingdom, if it pleases thee, O sinless one, as also the illustrious Karna and all the Kauravas. The accident that hath happened is, I imagine, a favorable one for us. Let us therefore repair to Virata's kingdom abounding in corn. We will appropriate his gems and other wealth of divers kinds, and let us go to share with each other as regards his villages and kingdom. Or invading his city by force, let us carry off by thousands his excellent kin of various species. Uniting, O king, the forces of the Kauravas and the Trigatas, let us lift his cattle in droves. Or uniting our forces well, we will check his power by forcing him to sue for peace. Or destroying his entire host, we will bring Matsya under subjection. Having brought him under subjection by just means, we will live in our kingdom happily, while thy power also will, without doubt, be enhanced. Hearing these words of Suzaman, Karna addressed the king saying, Suzaman hath spoken well. The opportunity is favorable and promises to be profitable to us. Therefore, if it pleases thee, O sinless one, let us, drawing up our forces in battle array and marshalling them in divisions, speedily set out. Or let the expedition be managed as Saradvata's son Kripa, the preceptor Drona, and the wise and aged grandsire of the Kurus may think. Consulting with each other, let us, O Lord of earth, speedily set out to attain our end. What business have we with the sons of Pandu, destitute as they are of wealth, might, and prowess? They have either disappeared for good or have gone to the abode of Yama. We will, O king, repair without anxiety to Virata's city and plunder his cattle and other wealth of divers kinds. Vaisampayana continued, accepting these words of Karna, the son of Surya, King Duryodhana speedily commanded his brother Dusasana, born immediately after him and always obedient to his wishes, saying, consulting with the elders, array without delay our forces. We will, with all the Kauravas, go to the appointed place. Let also the mighty warrior, King Suzaman, accompanied by a sufficient force with vehicles and animals, set out with the Trigatas for the dominions of Matsyas. And let Suzaman proceed first, carefully concealing his intention. Following in their wake, we will set out the day after in close array for the prosperous dominions of King Matsya. Let the Trigatas, however, suddenly repair to the city of Virata, and coming upon the cowherds, seize that immense wealth of kin. We also, marching in 2 divisions, will seize thousands of excellent kin furnished with auspicious marks. Vaisampayana continued, then, O Lord of earth, those warriors, the Trigatas, accompanied by their infantry of terrible prowess, marched towards the southeastern direction, intending to wage hostilities with Virata from the desire of seizing his kin. And Suzaman set out on the 7th day of the dark fortnight for seizing the kin. And then, O king, On the 8th day following of the dark fortnight, the Kauravas also, accompanied by all their troops, began to seize the king by thousands. Thus ends the 30th section in the Guharana Parva of the Virata Parva. Section 31, Guharana Parva continued. Vaisampayana said, O mighty king, entering into King Virata's service and dwelling in disguise in his excellent city, the high-souled Pandavas of immeasurable prowess, completed the promised period of non-discovery. And after Kichheka had been slain, that slayer of hostile heroes, the mighty King Virata began to rest his hopes on the sons of Kunti. And it was on the expiry of the 13th year of their exile o Bharata, that Susaman seized Virata's cattle by thousands. And when the cattle had been seized, the herdsman of Virata came with great speed to the city and saw his sovereign, the king of Matsyas, seated on the throne in the midst of wise counsellors and those bulls among men, the sons of Pandu, and surrounded by brave warriors decked with earrings and bracelets. And appearing before that enhancer of his dominion, King Virata seated in court, the herdsman bowed down unto him and addressed him saying, O foremost of kings, defeating and humiliating us in battle along with our friends, the Trigatas are seizing thy cattle by hundreds and by thousands. Do thou therefore speedily rescue them. O see that they are not lost to thee. Hearing these words, the king arrayed for battle the Matsya force abounding in cars and elephants and horses and infantry and standards. And kings and princes speedily put on, each in its proper place, their shining and beautiful armor worthy of being worn by heroes. And Virata's beloved brother, Satanika, put on a coat of mail made of adamantine steel, adorned with burnished gold. And Madiraksha, next in birth to Satanika, put on a strong coat of mail plated with gold and capable of resisting every weapon. And the coat of mail that the king himself of the Matsyas put on was invulnerable and decked with 100 suns, 100 circles, 100 spots, and 100 eyes. And the coat of mail that Suryadatta put on was bright as the sun, plated with gold and broad as 100 lotuses of the fragrant Kahlara species. And the coat of mail that Virata's eldest son, the heroic Sanksha put on was impenetrable and made of burnished steel and decked with 100 eyes of gold. And it was thus that those godlike and mighty warriors by hundreds, furnished with weapons, and eager for battle, each donned his corslet, and then they yoked unto their excellent cars of white hue steeds, equipped in mail. And then was hoisted Matsya's glorious standard on his excellent car decked with gold and resembling the sun or the moon in its effulgence. And other Kshatriya warriors also raised on their respective cars gold-decked standards of various shapes and devices. And King Matsya then addressed his brother Satanika, born immediately after him, saying, Kanka and Vallava and Tantripala and Damagranti of great energy will, as it appears to me, fight without doubt. Give thou unto them cars furnished with banners, and let them case their persons in beautiful coats of mail that should be both invulnerable and easy to wear. And let them also have weapons, bearing such martial forms and possessed of arms resembling the trunk of mighty elephants. I can never persuade myself that they cannot fight. Hearing these words of the king, Satanika, O monarch, immediately ordered cars for those sons of Pritha, the royal Yudhishthira, Bhima, Nakula and Sahadeva, and commanded by the king, the charioteers with cheerful hearts and keeping loyalty in view, very soon got cars ready for the Pandavas. And those repressors of force then donned those beautiful coats of mail, invulnerable and easy to wear, that Virata had ordered for those heroes of spotless fame. And mounted on cars yoked with good steeds, those smiters of hostile ranks, those foremost of men, the sons of Pritha set out with cheerful hearts. Indeed, those mighty warriors skilled in fight, those bulls of the Kuru race and sons of Pandu, those 4 heroic brothers possessed of prowess incapable of being baffled, mounting on cars decked with gold, together set out following Virata's wake. and infuriate elephants of terrible mien, full 60 years of age with shapely tusks and rent temples and juice trickling down and looking, on that account like cloud pouring rain, and mounted by trained warriors skilled in fight, followed the king like unto moving hills. And the principal warriors of Matsya who cheerfully followed the king had 8,000 cars, 1,000 elephants and 60,000 horses. And O bull among the Bharatas, that force of Virata, O king, as it marched forth marking the footprints of the cattle, looked exceedingly beautiful. And on its march, that foremost of armies owned by Virata, crowded with soldiers armed with strong weapons and abounding in elephants, horses and cars, looked really splendid. Thus ends the 31st section in the Guharana Parva of the Virata Parva. Section 32, Guharana Parva continued. Vaisampayana said, marching out of the city, those heroic smiters, the Matsyas, arrayed in order of battle, overtook the Trigatas when the sun had passed the meridian. And both excited to fury and both desirous of having the king, the mighty Trigatas and the Matsyas, irrepressible in battle, sent up loud roars. And then the terrible and infuriate elephants, ridden over by the skillful combatants of the both sides, were urged on with spiked clubs and hooks. And the encounter, O king, that took place when the sun was low in the horizon, between the infantry and cavalry and chariots and elephants of both parties, was like unto that of old between the gods and the asuras, terrible and fierce and sufficient for making one's hair stand on end, and calculated to increase the population of Yama's kingdom. And as the combatants rushed against one another, smiting and slashing, thick clouds of dust began to rise, so that nothing could be discovered. And covered with the dust raised by the contending armies, birds began to drop down on the earth. And the sun himself disappeared behind the thick cloud of arrows shot, and the firmament looked bright, as if with myriads of the fireflies. And shifting their bows, the staves of which were decked with gold, from one hand to another, those heroes began to strike each other down, discharging their arrows right and left. And cars encountered cars, and foot soldiers fought with foot soldiers, and horsemen with horsemen, and elephants with mighty elephants. And they furiously encountered one another with swords and axes, bearded darts and javelins and iron clubs. And although, O king, those mighty armed warriors furiously assailed one another in that conflict, yet neither party succeeded in prevailing over the other. And saved heads, some with beautiful noses, some with upper lips deeply gashed, some decked with earrings, and some divided with wounds about the well-trimmed hair, were seen rolling on the ground covered with dust. And soon the field of battle was overspread with the limbs of Kshatriya warriors, cut off by means of arrows and lying like trunks of sala trees. And scattered over with heads decked in earrings and sandal besmeared arms looking like the bodies of snakes, the field of battle became exceedingly beautiful. And as cars encountered cars, and horsemen encountered horsemen, and foot soldiers fought with foot soldiers, and elephants met with elephants, the frightful dust soon became drenched with torrents of blood. And some amongst the combatants began to swoon away, and the warriors began to fight reckless of consideration of humanity, friendship and relationship. And both their course and sight obstructed by the arrowy shower, vultures began to alight on the ground. But although those strong armed combatants furiously fought with one another, yet the heroes of neither party succeeded in routing their antagonists. And Satanika, having slain a full 100 of the enemy and Visalaksha full 400, both those mighty warriors penetrated into the heart of the great Trigata host. And having entered into the thick of the Trigata host, those famous and mighty heroes began to deprive their antagonists of their senses by causing a closer conflict to set in, a conflict in which the combatants seized one another by the hair and tore one another with their nails, and eyeing the point where the cars of the Trigatas had been mustered in strong numbers, those heroes at last directed their attack towards it. And that foremost of car warriors, King Virata also with Suryadatta in his van and Madiraksha in his rear, having destroyed in that conflict 500 cars, 800 horses, and 5 warriors on great cars, displayed various skillful maneuvers on his car on that field of battle. And at last the king came upon the ruler of the Trigatas, mounted on a golden chariot. And those high-souled and powerful warriors, desirous of fighting, rushed roaring against each other like 2 bulls in a cowpen. Then that bull among men, irrepressible in battle, Susaman the king of the Trigatas, challenged Matsya to a single combat on car. Then those warriors, excited to fury, rushed against each other on their cars and began to shower their arrows upon each other, like clouds pouring torrents of rain. And enraged with each other, those fierce warriors, both skilled in weapons, both wielding swords and darts and maces, then moved about on the field of battle assailing each other with whetted arrows. Then King Virata pierced Susaman with 10 shafts and each of his 4 horses also with 5 shafts. And Susaman also, irresistible in battle and conversant with fatal weapons, pierced King of Matsya with 50 whetted shafts. And then, O mighty monarch, in consequence of the dust on the field of battle, the soldiers of both Susaman and Matsya's king could not distinguish one another. Thus ends the 32nd section in the Guharana Parva of the Virata Parva. Section 33, Guharana Parva continued. Vaisampayana said, Then O Bharata, when the world was enveloped in dust and the gloom of night, the warriors of both sides, without breaking the order of battle, desisted for a while. And then, dispelling the darkness, the moon arose, illumining the night and gladdening the hearts of the Kshatriya warriors. And when everything became visible, the battle once more began. And it raged on so furiously that the combatants could not distinguish one another. And then Trigata's lord, Susaman with his younger brother, and accompanied by all his cars, rushed towards the king of Matsya. And descending from their cars, those bulls among Kshatriyas, the royal brothers, maces in hand, rushed furiously towards the cars of the foe. And the hostile hosts fiercely assailed each other with maces and swords and scimitars, battle axes and bearded darts with keen edges and points of excellent temper. And King Susaman, the lord of the Trigatas, having by his energy oppressed and defeated the whole army of the Matsyas, impetuously rushed towards Virata himself endued with great energy. And the 2 brothers, having severally slain Virata's 2 steeds and his charioteer, as also those soldiers that protected his rear, took him captive alive, when deprived of his car. Then afflicting him sorely, like a lustful man afflicting a defenseless damsel, Susaman placed Virata on his own car, and speedily rushed out of the field. And when the powerful Virata, deprived of his car, was taken captive, the Matsyas, harassed sorely by the Trigatas, began to flee in fear in all directions. And beholding them panic-stricken, Kunti's son Yudhishthira addressed that subduer of foes, the mighty armed Bhima, saying, The king of the Matsyas hath been taken by the Trigatas. Do thou, O mighty armed one, rescue him so that he may not fall under the power of the enemy. As we have lived happily in Virata's city, having every desire of ours gratified, it behoveth thee, O Bhimasena, to discharge that debt by liberating the king. Thereat Bhimasena replied, I will liberate him, O king, at thy command. Mark the feat I achieved today in battling with the foe, relying solely on the might of my arms. Do thou, O king, stay aside, along with our brothers, and witness my prowess today. Uprooting this mighty tree of huge trunk looking like a mace, I will rout the enemy. Vaisampayana continued, beholding Bhima casting his eyes on that tree like a mad elephant, the heroic king Yudhishthira just spake unto his brother, saying, Do not, O Bhima, commit such a rash act. Let the tree stand there. Thou must not achieve such feats in a superhuman manner by means of that tree, for if thou dost, The people, O Bharata, will recognize thee and say, "This is Bhima." Take thou therefore some human weapons such as a bow and arrows, or a dart, or a sword, or a battle axe. And taking therefore, O Bhima, some weapon that is human, liberate thou the king without giving anybody the means of knowing thee truly. The twins endued with great strength will defend thy wheels. Fighting together, O child, liberate the king of the Matsyas. Vaisampayana continued, thus addressed, the mighty Bhimasena endued with great speed, quickly took up an excellent bow and impetuously shot from it a shower of arrows, thick as the downpour of a rain-charged cloud. And Bhima then rushed furiously towards Susaman of terrible deeds, and assuring Virata with the words, "O good king," said unto the lord of the Trigatas, "Stay! Stay!" Seeing Bhima like unto Yama himself in his rear, saying, "Stay! Stay! Do thou witness this mighty feat, this combat that is at hand." The bull among warriors, Susaman seriously considered the situation, and taking up his bow turned back, along with his brothers. Within the twinkling of an eye, Bhima destroyed those cars that sought to oppose him. And soon again hundreds of thousands of cars and elephants and horses and horsemen and brave and fierce bowmen were overthrown by Bhima in the very sight of Virata. And the hostile infantry also began to be slaughtered by the illustrious Bhima, mace in hand. And beholding that terrible onslaught, Susaman, irrepressible in fight, thought within himself, "My brother seems to have already succumbed in the midst of his mighty host. Is my army going to be annihilated?" And drawing his bowstring to his ear, Susaman then turned back and began to shoot keen-edged shafts incessantly. And seeing the Pandavas return to the charge on their car, the Matsya warriors of mighty host, urging on their steeds, shot excellent weapons for grinding the Trigata soldiers. And Virata's son also, exceedingly exasperated, began to perform prodigious feats of valor. And Kunti's son Yudhishthira slew 1,000 of the foe, and Bhima showed the abode of Yama unto 7,000, and Nakula sent 700 to their last account by means of his shafts. And powerful Sahadeva also, commanded by Yudhishthira, slew 300 brave warriors. And having slain such numbers, that fierce and mighty warrior, Yudhishthira with weapons upraised, rushed against Susaman. And rushing impetuously at Susaman, that foremost of warriors, King Yudhishthira, assailed him with volleys of shafts. And Susaman also in great rage, quickly pierced Yudhishthira with 9 arrows, and each of his 4 steeds with 4 arrows. Then, O king, Kunti's son Bhima of quick movements approaching Susaman crushed his steeds. And having slain also those soldiers that protected his rear, he dragged from the car his antagonist's charioteer to the ground. And seeing the king of Trigata's car without a driver, the defender of his car wheels, the famous and brave Madiraka speedily came to his aid. And thereat leaping down from Susaman's car and securing the latter's mace, the powerful Virata ran in pursuit of him. And though old, he moved on the field, mace in hand even like a lusty youth. And beholding Susaman flee, Bhima addressed him saying, "Desist, O prince. This flight of thine is not proper. With this prowess of thine, how couldst thou wish to carry off the cattle by force? How also, forsaking thy followers, dost thou droop so amidst force?" Thus addressed by Pritha's son, the mighty Susaman, that lord of countless cars, saying unto Bhima, "Stay! Stay!" suddenly turned round and rushed at him. Then Bhima, the son of Pandhu, leaping down from his car, as he alone could do, rushed forward with great coolness, desirous of taking Susaman's life. And desirous of seizing Trigata's king advancing towards him, the mighty Bhimasena rushed impetuously towards him even like a lion rushing at a small deer. And advancing impetuously, the mighty armed Bhima seized Susaman by the hair, and lifting him up in wrath, dashed him down on the ground. And as he lay crying in agony, the mighty-armed Bhima kicked him at the head, and placing his knee on his breast dealt him severe blows. And sorely afflicted with that kicking, the king of Trigartas became senseless. And when the king of the Trigartas, deprived of his car, had been seized thus, the whole Trigarta army, stricken with panic, broke and fled in all directions, and the mighty sons of Pandu, endued with modesty and observant of woes and relying on the might of their own arms, after having vanquished Suzaman, and rescued the kin as well as other kinds of wealth, and having thus dispelled Virata's anxiety, stood together before that monarch. And Bhimasena then said, "This wretch given to wicked deeds doth not deserve to escape me with life. But what can I do? The king is so lenient." And then taking Suzaman by the neck as he was lying on the ground insensible and covered with dust, and binding him fast, Pritha's son Vrikodara placed him on his car and went to where Yudhishthira was staying in the midst of the field. And Bhima then showed Suzaman unto the monarch. And beholding Suzaman in that plight, that tiger among men, King Yudhishthira smilingly addressed Bhima, that ornament of battle, saying, "Let this worst of men be set free." Thus addressed, Bhima spoke unto the mighty Suzaman, saying, "If, O wretch, thou wishest to live, listen to those words of mine. Thou must say in every court and assembly of men, I am a slave. On this condition only I will grant thee thy life. Verily, this is the law about the vanquished." Thereupon his elder brother affectionately addressed Bhima, saying, "If thou regardest us as an authority, liberate this wicked wight. He hath already become King Virata's slave." And turning then to Suzaman, he said, "Thou art freed. Go thou a free man, and never act again in this way." Thus ends the 33rd section in the Guharana Parva of the Virata Parva. Section 34, Guharana Parva continued. Vaisampayana said, thus addressed by Yudhishthira, Suzaman was overwhelmed with shame and hung down his head. And liberated from slavery, he went to King Virata and having saluted the monarch, took his departure. And the Pandavas also, relying on the might of their own arms and endued with modesty and observant of woes, having slain their enemies and liberated Suzaman, passed that night happily on the field of battle. And Virata gratified those mighty warriors, the sons of Kunti, possessed of superhuman prowess with wealth and honors. And Virata said, "All these gems of mine are now as much yours as mine. Do ye according to your pleasure. Live here happily. And ye smiter of foes in battle, I will bestow on you damsels decked with ornaments, wealth in plenty, and other things that ye may like. Delivered from perils today by your prowess, I am now crowned with victory. Do ye all become the lords of the Matsyas." Vaisampayana continued, and when the king of the Matsyas had addressed them thus, those descendants of the Kurus with Yudhishthira at their head, joining their hands, severally replied unto him, saying, "We are well pleased with all that thou sayest, O monarch. We however have been much gratified that thou hast today been freed from thy foes." Thus answered, that foremost of kings, Virata the lord of the Matsyas, again addressed Yudhishthira, saying, "Come, we will install thee in sovereignty of the Matsyas. And we will also bestow on thee things that are rare on earth and are objects of desire, for thou deservest everything at our hands. O foremost of Brahmanas of the Vyagra order, I will bestow on thee gems and kin and gold and rubies and pearls. I bow unto thee. It is owing to thee that I once more behold today my sons and kingdom. Afflicted and threatened as I had been with disaster and danger, it is through thy prowess that I have not succumbed to the foe." Then Yudhishthira again addressed the Matsyas, saying, "Well pleased are we with the delightful words that thou hast spoken. Mayst thou be ever happy, always practicing humanity towards all creatures. Let messengers now, at thy command, speedily repair into the city, in order to communicate the glad tidings to our friends, and proclaim thy victory. Hearing these words of him, King Matsya ordered the messengers saying, Do ye repair to the city and proclaim my victory in battle. And let damsels and courtesans decked in ornaments come out of the city with every kind of musical instrument. Hearing this command uttered by the king of Matsyas, the men laying the mandate on their heads, all departed with cheerful hearts. And having repaired to the city that very night, they proclaimed at the hour of sunrise, the victory of the king about the city gates. Thus ends the 34th section in the Guharana Parva of the Virata Parva. Section 35, Guharana Parva continued. Vaisampayana said, when the king of the Matsyas, anxious of recovering the kin, had set out in pursuit of the Trigatas, Duryodhana with his counsellors invaded the dominions of Virata. And Bhishma and Drona and Karna and Kripa, acquainted with the best of weapons, Aswathaman and Suvala's son and Dusasana, O Lord of men, and Viving Seti and Vikarna and Chitrasena endued with great energy, and Durmukha and Dusaha, these and many other great warriors, coming upon the Matsya dominion speedily drove off the cowherds of King Virata and forcibly took away the kin. And the Kauravas, surrounding all sides with a multitude of cars, seized 60,000 of kin. And loud was the yell of woe set up by the cowherds smitten by those warriors in that terrible conflict. And the chief of the cowherds, greatly affrighted, speedily mounted on a chariot and set out for the city, bewailing in affliction. And entering the city of the king, he proceeded to the palace and speedily alighting from the chariot, got in for relating what had happened. And beholding the proud son of Matsya, named Bhuminjaya, he told him everything about the seizure of the royal kin. And he said, the Kauravas are taking away 60,000 kin. Rise therefore, O enhancer of the kingdom's glory, for bringing back thy cattle. O prince, if thou art desirous of achieving the kingdom's good, set out thyself without loss of time. Indeed the king of the Matsyas left thee in the empty city. The king, thy father, boasteth of thee in court, saying, My son, equal unto me, is a hero and is the supporter of the glory of my race. My son is a warrior, skilled in arrows and weapons, and is always possessed of great courage. O let the words of that Lord of men be true. O chief of herd owners, bring thou back the kin after vanquishing the Kurus, and consume thou their troops with the terrific energy of thy arrows. Do thou, like a leader of elephants rushing at a herd, pierce the ranks of the foe with straight arrows of golden wings, discharged from thy bow. Thy bow is even like a winner. Its two ends represent the ivory pillows, its string, the main cord, its staff, the fingerboard, and the arrows shot from it musical notes. Do thou strike in the midst of the foe that winner of musical sound. Let thy steeds, O Lord of silvery hue, be yoked unto thy car, and let thy standard be hoisted, bearing the emblem of the golden lion. Let thy keen-edged arrows, endued with wings of gold, shot by thy strong arms, obstruct the path of those kings and eclipse the very sun. Vanquishing all the Kurus in battle like unto the wielder of the thunderbolt defeating the Asuras, return thou again to the city having achieved great renown. Son of Matsya's king, thou art the sole refuge of this kingdom, as that foremost of virtuous warriors, Arjuna is of the sons of Pandu. Even like Arjuna of his brothers, thou art without doubt the refuge of those dwelling within these dominions. Indeed we the subjects of this realm have our protector in thee. Vaisampayana continued, thus addressed by the cowherd in the presence of the females, in words breathing courage, the prince indulging in self-commendation within the female apartments, spoke these words. Thus ends the 35th section in the Guharana Parva of the Virata Parva. Section 36, Guharana Parva continued. Bhuta said, firm as I am in the use of the bow, I would set out this very day in the track of the kin if only someone skilled in the management of horses becomes my charioteer. I do not however know the man who may be my charioteer. Look ye therefore without delay for a charioteer. For me that am prepared for starting. My own charioteer was slain in the great battle that was fought from day to day for a whole month or at least for 28 nights. As soon as I get another person conversant with the management of the steeds, I will immediately set out, hoisting high my own standard. Penetrating into the midst of the hostile army abounding with elephants and horses out chariots, I will bring back the kin, having vanquished the Kurus who are feeble in strength and weak in weapons. Like a second wielder of the thunderbolt terrifying the Danavas, I will bring back the kin this very moment, affrighting in battle Duryodhana and Bhishma and Karna and Kripa and Drona with his son, and other mighty bowmen assembled for fight. Finding none to oppose, the Kurus are taking away the kin. What can I do when I am not there? The assembled Kurus shall witness my prowess today. And they shall say unto one another, is it Arjuna himself who is opposing us? Vaisampayana continued, having heard these words spoken by the prince, Arjuna fully acquainted with the import of everything, after a little while cheerfully spake in private unto his dear wife of faultless beauty, Krishna, the princess of Panchala, Drupada's daughter of slender make, sprung from the sacrificial fire and endued with the virtues of truthfulness and honesty and ever attentive to the good of her husbands. And the hero said, do thou, O beauteous one, at my request say unto Uta without delay, this Vrihanala was formerly the accomplished resolute charioteer of Pandu's son, Arjuna. Tried in many a great battle, even he will be thy charioteer. Vaisampayana continued, hearing these words uttered by the prince over and over again in the midst of the women, Panchali could not quietly bear those allusions to Vibhatsu. And bashfully stepping out from among the women, the poor princess of Panchala gently spake unto him these words, the handsome youth, looking like a mighty elephant and known by the name of Vrihanala, was formerly the charioteer of Arjuna. A disciple of that illustrious warrior, and inferior to none in use of the bow, he was known to me while I was living with the Pandavas. It was by him that the reins were held of Arjuna's excellent steeds when Agni consumed the forest of Khandava. It was with him as charioteer that Partha conquered all creatures at Khandavaprastha. In fact, there is no charioteer equal unto him. Uta said, thou knowest, O Sirindri, this youth. Thou knowest what this one of the neuter sex may or may not be. I cannot however, O blessed one, myself request Vrihanala to hold the reins of my horses. Draupadi said, Vrihanala, O hero, will without doubt obey the words of thy younger sister, that damsel of graceful hips. If he consents to be thy charioteer, thou wilt without doubt return, having vanquished the Kurus and rescued thy kin. Thus addressed by the Sirindri, Uta spake unto his sister, go thyself, O thou of faultless beauty, and bring Vrihanala hither. And dispatched by her brother, she hastily repaired to the dancing hall where that strong-armed son of Pandu was staying in disguise. Thus ends the 36th section in the Guharana Parva of the Virata Parva. Section 37, Guharana Parva continued. Vaisampayana said, thus dispatched by her elder brother, the fair-famed daughter of King Matsya, adorned with a golden necklace, ever obedient to her brother and possessed of a waist slender as that of the wasp, endued with the splendor of Lakshmi herself, decked with the plumes of the peacock, of slender make and graceful limbs, her hips encircled by a zone of pearls, her eyelashes slightly curved, and her form endued with every grace, hastily repaired to the dancing hall like a flash of lightning rushing towards a mass of dark clouds. And the faultless and auspicious daughter of Virata, of fine teeth and slender waist, of thighs close unto each other and each like the trunk of an elephant, her person embellished with an excellent garland, sought the son of Pritha like a she-elephant seeking her mate. And like unto a precious gem or the very embodiment of prosperity of Indra, of exceeding beauty and large eyes, that charming and adored and celebrated damsel saluted Arjuna. And saluted by her Partha asked that maiden of closed thighs and golden complexion, saying, What brings thee hither, a damsel decked in a necklace of gold? Why art thou in such a hurry, O gazelle-eyed maiden? Why is thy face, O beauteous lady, so cheerless? Tell me all this without delay. Vaisampayana continued, beholding O king his friend, the princess of large eyes in that plight, her friend, Arjuna, cheerfully inquired of her in these words the cause of her arrival there and then. And having approached that bull among men, the princess standing in the midst of her female attendants and displaying proper modesty addressed him, saying, The kin of this realm of Vrihanala are being driven away by the Kurus, and it is to conquer them that my brother will set out bow in hand. Not long ago his own charioteer was slain in battle, and there is none equal unto the one slain that can act as my brother's charioteer. And unto him striving to obtain a charioteer Sairindri, O Vrihanala, hath spoken about thy skill in the management of steeds. Thou wert formerly the favourite charioteer of Arjuna, and it was with thee that that bull among the sons of Pandu had alone subjugated the whole earth. Do thou therefore, O Vrihanala, act as the charioteer of my brother. By this time our kin have surely been driven away by the Kurus to a great distance. Bequest by me, if thou dost not act up to my words, I who am asking this service of thee out of affection will give up my life. Thus addressed by his friend of graceful hips, that oppressor of foes endued with immeasurable prowess went into the prince's presence. And like unto a she-elephant running after her young one, the princess possessed of large eyes followed that hero, advancing with hasty steps like unto an elephant with rent temples. And beholding him from a distance, the prince himself said, with thee as his charioteer, Dhananjaya the son of Kunti had gratified Agni at the Khandava forest and subjugated the whole world. Thus Sairindri hath spoken of thee to me, she knoweth the Pandavas. Do thou therefore, O Vrihanala, hold as thou didst the reins of my steeds, desirous as I am of fighting with the Kurus and rescuing my bovine wealth. Thou wert formerly the beloved charioteer of Arjuna, and it was with thee that that bull among the sons of Pandu had alone subjugated the whole earth. Thus addressed, Vrihanala replied unto the prince, saying, What ability have I to act as a charioteer in the field of battle? If it is song or dance of musical instruments or such other things, I can entertain thee therewith, but where is my skill for becoming a charioteer? Uta said, O Vrihanala, be thou a singer or a dancer, hold thou for the present, without loss of time, the reins of my excellent steeds, mounting upon my car. Vaisampayana continued, although that oppressor of foes, the son of Pandu, was acquainted with everything, yet in the presence of Uta he began to make many mistakes for the sake of fun. And when he sought to put the coat of mail on his body by raising it upwards, the large-eyed maidens, beholding it, burst out into a loud laughter. And seeing him quite ignorant of putting on armour, Uta himself equipped Vrihanala with a costly coat of mail. And casing his own person in an excellent armour of solar effulgence and hoisting his standard bearing the figure of a lion, the prince caused Vrihanala to become his charioteer. And with Vrihanala to hold his reins, the hero set out, taking with him many costly bows and a large number of beautiful arrows. And his friend, Uta's sister and her maidens then said unto Vrihanala, Do thou, O Vrihanala, bring for our dolls when thou comest back various kinds of good and fine cloths after vanquishing the Kurus assembled for battle, of whom Bhishma and Drona are foremost. Thus addressed, Partha the son of Pandu, in a voice deep as the roar of the clouds, smilingly said unto that bevy of fair maidens, If this Uta can vanquish those mighty warriors in battle, I will certainly bring excellent and beautiful cloths. Vaisampayana continued, having said these words, the heroic Arjuna urged the steeds towards the Kuru army over which floated innumerable flags. Just however as they were starting, elderly dames and maidens and brahmanas of rigid vows, beholding Utas seated on his excellent car with Vrihanala as charioteer and under that great banner hoisted on high, walked round the car to bless the hero. And the women said, "Let the victory that Arjuna, treading like a bull, had achieved of old on the occasion of burning the forest of Khandava be thine, O Vrihanala, when thou encounterest the Kurus today with Prince Uta." Thus ends the 37th section in the Guharana Parva of the Virata Parva. If you enjoyed this audiobook, please like and subscribe to be notified of when new audiobooks are uploaded. Thank you for listening and learning. Shanti.